far as I know, he's a very devoted teacher, and he has done lots of things for the department. Okay, and today he's going to present what he feels to be the need of a speaking test and how to implement it. So please join me in welcoming Jonathan for his talk.
Thank you very much for your lovely introduction, Mr. John. And thanks for everybody for coming today. I hope it's been so far. It's been a very interesting Sunday morning. It was definitely worth waking up today. And you could probably go back to sleep now. Okay. Yeah, so lots of fascinating ideas about testing and learning English this morning. And I'm not really an expert on this at all. I'm just a teacher. I'm just an English teacher. And it's very difficult for us English teachers because we learn about English and we learn about English teaching. But testing and assessment, which is so important, is actually very specialized and it can be very specialized, and it can actually be very difficult to get it right because it's not always intuitive how it works. So the idea of developing a useful speaking test, it's a bit like looking for the Holy Grail. Maybe we'll never get there, but we can always, we can try. So there are lots of difficulties. So I would just like to say that we're having a go, but we're definitely feeling very amateur about it. Probably the first thing that we need to do is to look at what's the best way to go forward, and maybe try to get some advice and help as to how to make it better. What kind of issues, what kind of pitfalls we might meet along the way. Okay, I'm going to go quickly, quickly through some of this PowerPoint. I don't want to dwell too much on it. I think probably the title is probably the most hopeful and useful part. Developing a useful speaking test. There's an interesting word there, useful. What useful means could be different for different people. And this is probably something to think about. There are many different levels, but many different stakeholders, as it were, in the test. There's the Ministry of Education, and there's the school, and there's these vast money-making testing companies. There is the idea of standards and so on, and so these questions have to be addressed. But also, what about students and teachers, and what are their needs? So let's scroll through it. Okay, we have graduation requirements for English majors, as Professor Jang has mentioned. That this problem with TOEIC and specifically, TOEIC is our what's the word? The principal suspect here. Okay. So standardized commercial tests, so that they're universally accepted, transferable, and so on. Okay? But there are problems. They're expensive, and you notice on this chart here, it's they're expensive, reading and writing, and maybe they're not necessarily very relevant for our students. And there are washback issues. Okay, now, how many of you have done TOEIC? I haven't done TOEIC myself. I didn't have to do TOEIC to get this job. Perhaps I should, perhaps I should have been forced to do it. So just interesting, how many of you actually done the TOEIC test? Okay. That's brilliant, okay. So, I mean, do you think it was a test of your English? Or was it a test of your patience? many stories about you know, people who get a very high score in TOEIC, but they cannot actually hold a conversation. So there are a big question, is this test really a good measure of English for us? And is it something we want our students to go through? How do you prepare for it? You see, one of the problems with these big, high-stakes tests is they create, they have a very big tidal wave of washback. Not just a little ripple, it's a whole wave. There's a whole industry, not just in the test, but in books produced to teach the test. Classes open to teach how to take the test. People are not learning English anymore, they're learning how to play the TOEIC game. Right? And Professor Jan's statistics were very interesting about it. So anyway, there's a question here, but you know, the problem is they are accepted and they're transferable, they're standardized, so that they have some, oh well, it's a measure we can hold on to. And at the moment, administrators do love numbers they can hold on to, despite the damage that they can cause. But that's another subject. So, we've had disappointing results with TOEIC. It's expensive, it's time-consuming, and not relevant. Okay, so what can we do? Well, I'm not going to go through all of this, but if we're going to do in-house testing, we have to come up with something which is valid and reliable, something that people can trust, basically. But it also has to be simple, because we're only English teachers. You know, we're not professional testers with you know, getting lots of money for each test we administer. So something that we can actually do in-house. Okay, so let's go through here. Validity. I'll skip through this and get to some reliability. I might come back to this later, but and authenticity. What we thought of was having an interview, a 5-minute interview, a bit like something like IELTS do, where you have like a one-to-one interview as a test of spoken English. So in theory, well, this is doable. It's fairly authentic in the sense that it's a real use of English communication one-to-one. And then we thought, well, let's also have another part to our test, which would be a presentation where people give a presentation using PowerPoint. So that we have not just one task, but 2 different tasks. The idea for that is to increase the range of possible tasks required of the students. So this was our idea, okay. And we have to think about assessment criteria, which, you know, how do we measure the English that people use? And we came across these concepts that, which we thought we could adapt to our own use. But they're not easy to work with, and that's a kind of a big question I have. And I'll come back to these a little bit later. Complexity, okay, the complexity of language, but also that you could talk about the complexity of interaction. Accuracy of language, that would seem to be easy to define, yes. However, in practice, there can also be problems. Fluency, again, that can be defined, but again, there are questions. Pronunciation, well, of course I have no problem because I grew up proper in London. But you know, in London, you know, there are some sounds we're not very good at pronouncing. Like, well, I won't go into that, but if you know Pygmalion or something, you get that idea. Right, the TH sound is often sounds like an F or a V in most Londoners. Pronunciation and an interested manner. This is something we came up with giving a presentation not just reading out a memorized speech, but actually putting your energy and expression into your speaking. Now, these assessment criteria can be actually quite complex, very complex, but we have to assess people in terms of these things. So that's going to be a major challenge for us to make it reliable and valid. Okay. So we can define accuracy in these ways. So is it the degree of deviancy from a particular norm, blah, 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 okay. But there's, as I mentioned here, there's a thorny issue of criteria for evaluating accuracy and identifying errors. Because, you can say something incorrectly, but still communicate perfectly well. So when I park my motorcycle next to the train station, if he says 2T instead of 30, I know what he means, even though 2T is wrong, it should be 20. But 2T is a kind of an English that he invented, so that's wrong, okay. But however, it does work, in terms of communication. What about leaving out articles, as many Chinese speakers do, that would be inaccurate, but maybe, how important is it? So, should we go for prescriptive standard norms or non-native usages? I mean, this raises the question about, English is a foreign language or English is an international language. Okay, what kind of standards do we need to have? Fluency is another one. Perhaps I won't spend time on this definition here, but again, it's a very complex, concept. It's not easy to operationalize. So, one teacher might have a different idea what fluency means to another. So it could be very subjective. Okay. Including different things like rate and density of delivery, breakdown, repair fluency, and so on and so on. It can get quite complex. Complexity, okay. The size, elaborateness, richness, and diversity of the learner's linguistic L2 system. Wow. I mean, that's very, that covers a whole range of things. Now, so if we're listening to a 5-minute interview, which we record, we have to kind of give a score of complexity to the language. Now, how do we do that? Except, well, I think that's a 5 or a 6 or a 7. Now, we're going to be quite subjective about it. How are we going to deal with that? And again, it's the same with all of these, was that fluent? How fluent was that? Was that accurate? How accurate was that? And so on, yeah? Pronunciation, was it good standard EFL or EIL? Okay. Did I understand it? Was it beautiful? Now, sometimes I watch the BBC News and maybe I hear somebody speaking from Cairo, in some very, very shaky Egyptian-sounding English. And I think, oh, I really don't want to listen to this. It's so difficult to listen because the pronunciation is not very good. But then, it's like, well, but, people can understand what he's saying. So maybe if I don't like listening to it, does that mean I should say it's bad? Maybe somebody else in Cairo thinks it's perfectly good English. Who am I to say? Okay, lots of questions here. Expression, engagement. Okay, this concept needs further definition. Okay. But as I said before, putting expression into language can be a useful skill or part of your knowledge of English. Anyway, something to discuss. So, some questions here. The constructs of, complexity, accuracy, fluency, EIL or EFL standards. Now, examiner consistency and training. Well, what we thought was to have two teachers independently rate each interview, record an interview and have them independently rated by two interviewers, two teachers, and then to have a moderation meeting, maybe with a third teacher, to if there were some problems in the assessment. Now, we expect there to be kind of fairly wide differences, but there are big questions here. You know, how consistent can we be in giving our grading of interviews, and what kind of bias might we have? Now, bias, there are all kinds of bias. You know, maybe you don't like the look of the person. You know, I mean, you know, when you're in an interview, these things might unconsciously affect the way you grade somebody. Anyway, there are many issues there, but also in terms of grammar or pronunciation or whatever. So the assessment protocol, okay, so we need to develop in more detail how the assessment is administered. I can give more details we've done so far if it's of interest. But then finally, another question, setting thresholds. So what is a pass? Now, you see, we have an issue here that if it's a graduation requirement, then we have to say, okay, the English of this person, the student, is good enough to graduate, or not good enough to graduate. So it's a fairly high stakes kind of question there. So, or do we just want to encourage students to do the best they can, which is another way of looking at assessment. So we're a bit between two stools here. Are we summative assessment, saying, oh, right, you failed or you succeeded, or are we formative, where we are encouraging students to improve their English to do this test? So that's another question which I think arises from this process. Okay, that's about all I want to say very quickly. Not much details there, but I think more interesting would be to hear what people's comments, thoughts, or questions, and maybe from that discussion we can go forward in a positive way. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now after this brief presentation, well, not actually very brief, we see lots of things there. Do we want to hear from the students first, or? Okay, okay.
Thank you, Jonathan, for providing us so good background for this issue. I think I would like to approach this topic from two simple perspectives. One is assessment. In terms of our school students, I think the assessment part lies in the encouragement. Try to encourage our students to open their mouth, just speak out. Whenever occasion comes, or whenever chances are there, try to encourage them to open their mouth, to speak louder. If they speak more, they will listen more, they will read that. Right? So in that case, I think that's a direct help with our students' English capabilities. In terms of assessment, I think we have another view, kind of setting based on encouragement also. We don't define assessment as an evaluation, a kind of a test. We perhaps will take assessment as a kind of diagnosis for our next step teaching to find what problems the students encounter in their grammatical writing or speaking or pronunciation. In whatever respect, we just help them find out his own problem, and we try to help him or her to solve the problem. In that case, students won't be nervous when he gets to the assessment, because our students are not so strong in English. So what is in need for them is encouragement and tolerance. So my thinking and my idea is that to provide them with more chances to try, even what they speak is not entirely correct or grammatical, but not so fluent. But we are still under position to encourage. That's my simple suggestions with this with this issue. Because now in our global world, English is used globally. I will take a very simple example. My son works at an IT organizer for a group in a cross-country company. When he got to India, then English is spoken there from different accents, because on the table is a kind of a global business. So from more than 10 countries with more than 15 accents, English was spoken there. And he tried to familiarize himself with different accents on that, for that communication purpose. So I think in the near future, we can imagine English will be used as a global language instead of academic language. Right? So try to encourage our students to open their mouth, just to speak up. And I think that will be the first step to lead them to the world of English spoken word. Thank you.
And so our chair.
All right, as one of the panelists, I think, I need to say something too. Well, I just want to provide some background information about this oral assessment program that is being now experimented in our department. And this goes on.
Hello. Well, we know we all have this so-called English graduation requirement for all students here, and then the graduate school students and also this undergraduate students. But then starting from this year, actually for the evening division students, for the evening undergraduate students, okay, they do not need to take this TOEIC test, and then they have another option, which is they will be given an oral communication ability assessment by our faculty members, and then if we believe that it is okay, that they that the oral communication ability is okay, then they can graduate. So then this is some new things we are experimenting, and then, but then in order to do this, first we need to convince the university, the policymakers as well, whether or not this is a good thing to do. And I'm glad to hear from Professor Zhang that okay, this should be a good thing. Okay? So then next time, okay, the president asks me, all right, well, we have a Professor Zhang's endorsement, But then, I basically, that we especially, if we look at those evening division students, why do we require them to take TOEIC test. It is not useful to them, all right? And then also, they also kind of like you compare, when you look at the so-called national averages of TOEIC, right? So then the university in general, students is 500, about 10 or something. But then if you look at the so-called technological students, especially in the private universities, then the average is only 400 something, right? Actually, if you also look at those students, for example, in the engineering and science departments and of private technological students, the average could be something like in the 300 something. And these are, maybe, the culprits of this, they actually, are bringing down the national average, especially of the university students and also the national students. So then for those students, why do you want to put them to that test? It's really necessary. So then from our perspective, we actually made these proposals to the university and said that we want to change that. Okay, and then we want to implement this, the oral communication assessment within our department. And then we actually have a program, some practices going on. So then that's some background information for everybody here to know. And then I want to give one example about this. If students can communicate well enough, this student may be able to get a good job or get a good internship opportunity. Then students who just just scored high in the TOEIC test. For example, we have we in the past years, we sent some students, undergraduate students, to Singapore Changi Airport, and then as a so-called customer service agent there, and these the recruiting or when they recruit these interns, they actually don't require TOEIC score as or anything any score. Instead, they have an interview. Okay, in the first stage, Skype interview, right, and then second stage, face-to-face interview, and then I think it's more holistic, and I think so then they actually would like to know how well you can communicate, and communication, of course, involves many things, as Jonathan and just mentioned. There are many things. However, in that 5 minutes or 10 minutes time, they will decide whether or not they want to. And then accuracy, maybe it's part of it, but may not be that important. Right? However, so then when we look at this, the so-called usefulness, and then of tests, and then also look at how we are testing our students in elementary schools, and grammar, and then junior high and high school and college, and then sometimes we're using our own tests, sometimes we're using commercialized tests like TOEIC, and then are we doing the right thing or the good thing? And really, we need to think about this. So then, maybe a little on we can hear more comments or questions from the audience. So then, so far, okay, this is my just provide some information about our program, the background. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now the floor is open for you to say something about this test. I was wondering why the test, and now Victor just explained. Okay, so yeah, okay, so let's take the question first.
Hello, my name is Bridget. Actually, 2 weeks ago, my few students went to the GPP test. Okay, and actually Friday, okay, I just got a result, and few students mentioned that the listening part, it seems they think the male sound not familiar because the Taiwan teachers or the material always provide a very high standard pronunciation for the students, so they probably cannot get familiar the other accent. Okay, so my question is how to, how to train the students get familiar with other different accents from, maybe just Professor Zhong mentioned the India accent or European accent in English. Yeah, this is my question.
Okay, so does anyone want to answer that question?
I will try. Shall I speak with an Irish accent? Is there anybody from Ireland here? No, actually, I'm not very good at accents. Although where I come from in the UK, there are accents for every city you go to. Yeah. So I'm from London, so I sort of have a southeast England accent. But I've been in Taiwan long enough to pick up some American. Okay. Taiwan has been very American-centric in its pronunciation in the past. I think it's changing now. And I think some of the bigger tests are now looking at incorporating different accents. So I think there is some improvement. I guess exposure. I remember when I first went to Australia, I couldn't understand what they were saying for about 3 days.
Yeah, I have been to London, and when I go to the groceries, most of the groceries owners are Indians, right? So, okay, and when I say, oh, how much is that? And then I cannot understand the pronunciation, and I say, pardon me. And it's about the T and T, 15 or 50s problem. So I would say, pardon me, they tried cheating you. They want to sell.
Oh, sorry, I switched you off by mistake.
so that is I got, confused about the accent. So, because we trained by the, Americans accent. So when I went to England, and they say, are you American? And my home parents, I mean they just say water, not water. So it really confused if we take the education, English education in Taiwan. I mean, most students probably got this kind of problem. Yeah.
Well, I suppose materials, teaching materials. I hope that in the future there will be more better teaching materials. I sometimes use some of the Headway for some of my classes here. It's been going on forever. But actually, what's good about some of their material is that they do actually use people with different accents in the listening. They will use somebody from Spain speaking English, somebody from Germany speaking English, and and it's different. And it's a French person speaking English will sound very different to an Italian person speaking English, and of course Indian accents as well. So it really is about exposure, and so get away from English as being an American language. English is a global language, and then hopefully a few years later, materials or the stuff that you can find on YouTube as well will show this variety.
Thank you very much.
Just to mention in passing, in the 12-year English curriculum guideline that we're working on, we emphasize on this idea of world Englishes. So we encourage the textbook writers, material writers, to try experimenting different accents in their drills and activities. So later you will see a greater variety. Thank you. Okay, let's take more questions here from the audience. Please.
I'm going to respond to our graduate student questions. In the classroom, like high school or elementary school, exposure, I think, is kind of critical issues, especially teachers' trainings. Based on my personal experience, just like my daughters, she's going out in the core language programs. They kind of kids, not just like a language as a varieties difficulty. They also have an identity, national identity difficulties. They will ask themselves that they are American or they are Taiwanese students. But I think there's not really big deals. For students like today, so we explore to a lot of inputs. There's a very comprehensible. So I think so for their question, like syllabus or schedule in classroom, they always will cooperate with listening and speaking together. If you teach students explore different topics they discuss in class, they should listen to a lot of inputs around. For those video or program or even the magazine, like the National Geography or things like that, kids and high school students, even my undergraduate students, they like it. I don't know why. If you spend like 5 minutes, they teach them some extra curriculums, topics, or something like 5 minutes outside the classroom materials, they will help. Maybe because we are non-native speaker teachers, we got a different points of view. So if we have chance to like have a seminar or forum for both sides, teacher, native teacher and non-native speaker, we are also English teacher. We can have some exchange experience and we can talk about that. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So thank you for the sharing. Okay, so actually, sorry, but English is not the exclusive property anymore. Okay, it's English for as a lingua franca, so it's everyone's property. So we may modify it a little bit as long as the meaning is clear. So you will see more varieties in the future. Okay, so let's take more questions.
Just
very quick comment. Well, I think that in response also to your question, I think that you, as a English teacher in the elementary school or in high school, I think you should also try to educate the parents. Tell them that American English is not the only kind of English in the whole world. Now that English is a language that belongs to people in the world now, and then as you see, like you can give this example to the parents. You see, you only want your children to learn so-called standard American English. Then someday, okay, the child will face this kind of situation. They cannot understand different accents. So then, exposure to a variety of Englishes, it's good, it's necessary, and it's helpful.
Thank you. Okay. Other comments, suggestions? Yeah, please.
I'm Anita. Hello. I have a question for the speaker. I teach in elementary school. Yes, and I also try very hard to help my students. Two groups. One is from a very rich family, and the other is from those parents maybe based on very good economic ability. So I want to ask the question: do you have any recommendations for help those who are from poor, bad economic ability parents, the family, the students? Yes, I want to shorten the distance between. Thank you.
It's a very complex, but it's also a very important question. And it's a problem for teachers, it's a problem for the students, it's a problem for families, it's a problem for government policy, and it's a problem for on many levels. And I suppose, you could even take it on a philosophical level or a kind of political philosophical level. If you were a Marxist, you would probably talk about class reproduction. the system is there to make sure that the people who have the power and the money stay there. And they don't want people at the bottom to get a chance because it's, you know, it's threatening. Yeah. It's the status quo. Okay, but I'm not a Marxist. I'm not sure you should say that, but I mean that's what a Marxist might say. But there's a big question about resources. You know, teachers can try a lot. You know, we can develop group teaching. You know, we can have, you know, group teaching in our classes, or we can have different activities. We can have extra after school kind of English club or something. But all of these are kind of trying to fix a big problem about resources. And I think the question probably has to go back to whether we can get more resources for teaching English, so that the question, you know, some children have a fairly well-off background and can afford to go to the bilingual kindergarten and what have you, but others don't. So how do we deal with that? I think it's a policy. It's a policy, you know. And as a teacher, of course, we try our best. And there are things about group teaching or maybe having different kind of activities, but they're not the whole answer, really, I think.
Can I add on that? Okay, so besides the resources, actually what you can do is that, okay, you start where they are. So they're already falling behind. So don't expect that the next day they will be better. So you have to keep drilling them on the points that they don't know. So we talk about 差异化教学, differentiated instruction. So you have different groups of students. You design based on the same textbook, but you design different activities for them. You have different worksheets for different level students. And then when you do assessment, you do the same thing. But make sure they understand that probably the highest score they're going to get will be 70 if they work hard enough. Because if you don't do that, then probably other students will say, why this person gets that high mark there. So make sure you start where they are, because they start slow, they start later than their peers, so they need more patience from you. So my suggestion is 差异化教学, 差异化评量, and then don't let them feel too much frustration during the process of learning. So still this is going back to that concept of lifelong learning. At this stage, probably they won't catch up with other students because they have started long ago and they're doing quite well now. But for these kids, just encourage them. Don't give up. It's important. You will realize the importance when you leave school. Things like that. So take this concept of lifelong learning. Then they will manage to get it. Say that I started from senior high second year. I still become a professor. And my English is okay, right? Okay. So give them some examples just to show them it's possible. Yeah, let's take more questions. Speaking part. You think this is a good idea, right? For the evening session students not to waste their money and feeling they're losers, because that's a lot of money. $1,200 per test. And then every time they take it, they feel that I'm a loser. So I think Victor is right, okay, not asking them to go through that process. So instead, we have some courses preparing them for the speaking ability training, and then at the end, depending on what they learned in the different courses, we give them 2 tasks, 1 interview, 1 presentation. So presentation skill is also important here. So my suggestion would be, since this is kind of, it's low stakes. It's not high stakes like entrance exam, it's low stakes. 就是不会那么厉害，关系那么大的。And it's in-house, So you get some experience connecting the courses with this exit requirement, so to speak. And then they get to learn practical skills in doing presentation. That's better than taking TOEIC and feeling you're a loser. So it's good in terms of taking so in your speaking training, you make sure you have that component there. Okay. And for the interview part, actually this is the most intimidating part because you have this power structure. So you have Courtney always asking the question and they don't get the chance to initiate any question. So they're only responding. Actually, this is not talking. This is simply responding. So probably, I'm not sure, if in the courses they have been taught the skills to interact during the conversation, then probably you can add another task. Okay, interacting, meaning you have two speakers, two students coming to you, and you give them a topic, and for them to talk, for them to first read the topic and think about the topic, and then for them to interact. So you see the interacting part there. So later when they go out, they're better prepared for different kinds of speaking abilities. And it's always very difficult. It's always very difficult because you need interviewer, you need assessor, and you need people that keep time, and lots of other things. So this is something very challenging. Maybe a lot of budget is involved, so make sure you talk to the president, ask for money. Money is important. You need money to develop tasks, okay? And lots of things. So tell them we're making students feel better, okay? And we're doing it in a way that really encourage learning, okay? Encourage learning. You're not making their life difficult. You're helping them. And there's a good connection between learning and assessment. Why am I talking?
Because it's very informative and very interesting. Thank you very much for your input. I think it's very valuable to get your input on this because it's something that we are trying to develop, but we don't pretend to know exactly where it goes and how it should grow. So getting this input as we create it, I think, is very useful. I've got some questions. TOEIC is this big thing. It's like something. We can measure us against TOEIC. So will people trust an anti-graduate who hasn't got any TOEIC score?
Okay, so this is coming back to this question of, okay, the in-house tests, what's their validity? Okay, and this awaits your graduates to prove that they're capable office workers. And if this is the case, then probably you can create your non-Thai English language proficiency test. Maybe, I'm not sure, but we have lots of faculty members who are experienced teachers, and probably some of them know more about assessment. And together, we can make a difference. So, other questions that you have in mind? Yeah, sure.
I just would like to ask one more question. I just want to know about the follow-up. If a high school student, they can really pass the speaking test, or because it also around the responding questions, even the questions are kind of familiar topics for students, they cannot really understand the question, or they cannot respond in a 1 or 2 minutes because they got 10 minutes for each question. In that way, the students, do we have any way to help them, like any follow-up activities, or they can retake the test because they're really concerned about their graduation, right? What about the follow-up?
I think that's a very good question, and it's probably a question I'm going to refer to our chairman. because I mean, yes, I'm not sure the answer. Thank you.
I have another suggestion, like, yes, two followers, the end one section, like a picture describing that part.
Before I pass the mic to Victor, I think the suggestion would be for Victor to take them to a very fancy restaurant and you play very relaxed music and then you have candlelights and things like that and then they will talk after a few red wine. Okay, that it will keep you going because some liquid, some wine would help you relax, and then they can pass it.
This is a wonderful suggestion, all right? So that I will need in restaurants, a lot of times. But then before we can do that, we need to, we need to write a very good proposal to MOE, all right? And then maybe, when you see our proposal, please help us. All right, but then back to Allison's question. Basically, I think that you are asking if a student fails one of the interviews or one of the performance, and then will she or he get a second chance, right? Yeah, I believe that in our mechanism now, we have a course.